I'll never forget the way my dad's voice sounded that morning, sharp, cold, final. It was my 18th birthday. The day I had been waiting for my whole life, the day I thought things might finally change. I woke up to the smell of pancakes drifting from the kitchen, balloons taped haphazardly to the walls, and a small pile of wrapped gifts sitting neatly on the dining table. For one brief second, I let myself believe it was going to be a good day. A new chapter. Maybe even the beginning of my freedom. But instead, my dad looked me straight in the eyes and said just 3 words that shattered everything. Pack your bags. At first, I laughed, waiting for the punchline. Maybe it was a cruel joke, his twisted sense of humor showing up at the worst possible moment. But the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes refused to soften, I knew he meant it. What do you mean? I asked, my voice cracking. He didn't flinch. He didn't explain. He just repeated himself, slower this time, each word landing like a hammer. Pack your bags. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. My hands went cold as the air caught in my throat. This wasn't the kind of argument you have with your dad over staying out too late or not doing the dishes. This was different. Permanent. Dad, it's my birthday. I whispered, as though the reminder might change his mind, as though turning 18 should mean celebration, not exile. But he didn't care. He barely even looked at me. And that's when the panic hit. Why was he doing this? What had I done that was so unforgivable? Was he serious, really serious, about kicking me out on the very day I legally became an adult? I glanced at the stack of gifts on the table, the bright wrapping paper and ribbons mocking me. They weren't gifts anymore. They were goodbye presents. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The only sound in the room was the tick of the wall clock, each second pounding louder and louder in my ears, counting down to the moment my life as I knew it would end. All I could think was, where am I supposed to go? The house I had grown up in, the walls that had held my childhood, suddenly felt like a stranger space. I wasn't welcome here anymore. My dad, the man who was supposed to protect me, guide me, love me, was throwing me away like I was nothing. And deep down, I knew this wasn't random. He'd been waiting for this day. Counting down to it, just like the clock on the wall. I didn't know it then, but his decision wasn't just about me turning 18. It was about a secret, one that had been buried for years, waiting to explode. And on my 18th birthday, it finally did. When people look back at their childhood, they often remember warmth. Bedtime stories. Birthday cakes with too many candles. Laughter echoing through the house. But for me, childhood was more like walking on broken glass, careful, quiet, and painful in ways I didn't understand until much later. My dad wasn't the type to show affection. Some fathers are strict but loving, tough on the outside but soft at the core. Mine was strict and cold, and that was all. His words were commands, his eyes warnings, and his silence, worse than punishment. I can't recall a single time he hugged me just because. Not one moment where he said he was proud. And the older I got, the clearer it became, his expectations weren't just high, they were impossible. I remember being 9 years old, clutching my report card with straight A's. My hands trembled as I slid it across the table to him, waiting for even the smallest smile. Instead, he scanned the paper, his jaw tightening at the single A- in math. Sloppy, he muttered, pushing the paper back toward me. If you can't even get this right, what are you doing all day? I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, blinking back tears. To him, success wasn't worth celebrating. Only failure was worth noticing. It wasn't just academics. Everything was measured, graded, judged. If I spoke too loudly, he told me I was disrespectful. If I spoke too softly, I was weak. If I dressed a certain way, I was careless. If I dressed differently, I was showing off. No matter what I did, I was wrong. And yet, despite all that, a part of me never stopped trying. I wanted his approval the way a plant craves sunlight, reaching for it even when it never came. Mom was the buffer in those early years. She was gentle, quiet, always smoothing things over. When Dad scolded me for leaving a cup in the sink, Mom would say, "She's just a child, let it go." And for a moment, the storm would calm. But when I turned 13, Mom left. I still don't know if it was because of him or because of me, though I spent years convincing myself it must have been my fault. One day she was there, the next she was gone, and the only explanation I ever got was a note left on the kitchen counter: "I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." From then on, it was just me and Dad. And without her there, his coldness turned sharper, like a knife with no sheath. That was when the favoritism began. Not toward me, but toward my younger brother, Daniel. Daniel was 3 years younger, loud and carefree, the kind of kid who could spill juice on the carpet and laugh it off. Where I was scolded, he was excused. Where I was punished, he was comforted. I'll never forget the day he knocked a baseball through the living room window. Glass shattered everywhere. I froze, knowing how furious Dad would be. But when he stormed into the room, he didn't shout at Daniel. He didn't call him careless or stupid. Instead, he chuckled, ruffled his hair, and said, "Boys will be boys." That same week, I got grounded for forgetting to take the trash out. It was like living in 2 different households at once. For Daniel, home was a place of forgiveness. For me, it was a battlefield. The imbalance grew as we got older. Daniel became Dad's shadow, tagging along to fix the car, watching football games together, laughing in the garage late at night. I was invisible, a ghost haunting the same walls but never belonging. And yet, every once in a while, I caught glimpses of something deeper. Late at night, I'd overhear their conversations. Words like responsibility, her future, and not my problem. Always hushed, always cut off when I walked into the room. I didn't understand it then, but looking back, I realized Dad carried some secret weight when it came to me. It wasn't just disappointment. It was something else, resentment. By the time I was 16, I'd stopped chasing his approval. Instead, I built my own world. School became my escape. Friends became my family. I worked part-time jobs, saved money, dreamed about college, about leaving this house and never looking back. Still, there was always that tiny spark of hope. That maybe, just maybe, when I turned 18, things would shift. I pictured a day where he'd finally look at me and say, "You've made it. I'm proud of you." I imagined a birthday cake, a few kind words, even a smile that wasn't weighed down by judgment. But deep down, I should have known better. Because every word, every action, every cold glance in those years leading up to my birthday was pointing towards something darker. And when the day finally came, his message wasn't congratulations. It was exile. Pack your bags. Those 3 words didn't come from nowhere. They had been waiting for me all along, the final sentence in a story I never got to write. The weeks leading up to my 18th birthday felt like living in 2 different worlds. On one side, I had my friends. They were buzzing with excitement for me, teasing me about finally being an adult. They talked about college applications, road trips, and all the freedom we thought adulthood promised. At school, I laughed along, pretending I felt the same anticipation. But at home, it was different. The house carried a strange weight I couldn't quite name. My dad didn't say anything about my upcoming birthday, didn't mention plans or gifts or even the fact that I was turning 18. Daniel would casually ask, "Hey, are you gonna do something fun for your birthday?" But even he sounded awkward, like he already knew the answer. It was as though my birthday was something no one in that house wanted to acknowledge. Still, I clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, Dad had something planned. Not a big party, not balloons, or cakes or surprises, but something. A gesture. A word. Anything. But then, little things started happening. Subtle, quiet things that gnawed at my chest. One night, about 2 weeks before my birthday, I walked past the garage and overheard Dad talking on the phone. His voice was low, serious. "She's almost 18, he said, pacing. After that, it's not my problem anymore. My stomach twisted. Who was he talking about? Who wasn't his problem anymore? I wanted to believe I'd misheard. That maybe he was talking about work, or about bills, or something that had nothing to do with me. But deep down, I knew better. Another time, I noticed him cleaning out the storage closet. He pulled out an old duffel bag, tossed it onto my bed, and left without saying a word. No explanation, no reason. Just that one act, heavy with unspoken meaning. It felt like he was preparing for something, and I was at the center of it. The closer my birthday got, the more anxious I became. Nights stretched long, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. Why did Dad look at me with that same cold finality every time our eyes met? Why did Daniel avoid talking about it, changing the subject whenever I brought up turning 18? And why did it feel like the walls of the house themselves were pushing me out? The silence grew unbearable. I found myself daydreaming in class, imagining two versions of the future. In one, Dad surprised me with a cake and a rare smile, finally acknowledging me with kindness. In the other, I left the house with nothing but a backpack, my entire life split into before and after. But even in those daydreams, the second vision always felt more real. The night before my birthday, I barely slept. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator down the hall and the soft snores of my brother's room. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown, a drumbeat leading to something I wasn't prepared for. At 3 a.m, I found myself packing a small bag in secret. Not because I wanted to leave, but because some part of me knew I might have to. I tucked away a few clothes, my school ID, the little bit of cash I'd saved from working shifts at the diner. Just in case. Just in case my worst fear was true. When the sun finally rose on my 18th birthday, the house felt colder than ever. There were balloons taped to the wall, yes. A stack of gifts waiting on the table. Pancakes on the stove, the kind Mom used to make before she left. It all looked like the picture of a birthday morning. But the air was thick with tension, like everyone was waiting for something else to happen. Something bigger. And then Dad walked in. His face unreadable, his voice steady. 3 words. Pack your bags. And little did I know, what my dad was about to say on my 18th birthday would change my life forever. If you've ever faced a family moment that shocked you to your core, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story too. Pack your bags. Those 3 words echoed through the kitchen like thunder. I stood frozen, clutching the edge of the counter for balance, my birthday pancakes cooling on the plate untouched. Dad, what are you talking about? My voice was small, shaky, as if maybe he'd realize how absurd it sounded and take it back. But he didn't even hesitate. You're 18 now. You're grown. This house isn't your responsibility anymore. Or mine. My chest tightened. Not your responsibility? I repeated, my throat raw. I'm your daughter. He met my eyes for the first time, and I swear I saw nothing there. No warmth. No hesitation. Just cold, hard resolve. You've got until tonight. Whatever you need, take it. After that, you're on your own. I felt the air leave my lungs. Dad, you can't just kick me out. I have school. I don't even have enough saved yet. Where am I supposed to go? He crossed his arms, unmoved. That's not my concern. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Not your concern? I'm your daughter. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. 18 doesn't magically mean I'm ready for this. Why are you doing this to me? He didn't answer. Instead, he turned away, pouring himself a cup of coffee as though the conversation was over. As though my whole life hadn't just collapsed around me. I wanted to scream. To throw the cup out of his hands and demand he look at me. But I couldn't move. My body shook, my hands cold, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall in front of him. Is this about Mom? I finally whispered. Because she left? Because you couldn't keep her? Is that why you're punishing me? His hand froze midair, just for a second, before he set the cup down a little too hard. The clink of ceramic against the counter made me flinch. "Don't talk about your mother," he snapped. The silence that followed was worse than his anger. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. "So that's it? You've been waiting for this day. Counting down until you could throw me out and never look back." He didn't deny it. And that silence, more than the words, more than the cold stares over the years, confirmed everything. Daniel came into the kitchen then, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. "Nothing you need to worry about," Dad said quickly. But I wasn't going to let him hide it. Not anymore. "He's kicking me out," I blurted. My voice was sharp, bitter. "On my birthday." Daniel's eyes widened. "What?" "Dad, you can't be serious." "I said it's not your concern," Dad repeated, his voice like steel. Daniel's face turned red. "She's your daughter. You can't just—" But Dad cut him off with a glare that silenced us both. "Enough. This conversation is over." And then he walked out. Just like that. As if throwing me out of his house was as simple as flipping a light switch. I collapsed into a chair, my body shaking. Daniel sat beside me, his face pale. "He can't do this," he whispered. "He won't. He's just angry." But I knew better. This wasn't anger. This was a plan. One he had been waiting years to carry out. I pressed my hands to my face, hot tears spilling through my fingers. My birthday gifts sat untouched on the table, bright paper and ribbons mocking me with their cheerfulness. It wasn't a celebration. It was a goodbye. The hours crawled by. I tried to pack, but every item I folded into the duffel bag felt like tearing out a piece of my life. The photos on my bedroom wall, the books stacked by my bed, even the worn blanket Mom had left behind, I couldn't take it all. I couldn't take home with me. And yet, I had no choice. When the sun dipped low, painting the walls in shades of orange and pink, Dad appeared in my doorway. He didn't say a word. Just stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp. The unspoken message was clear: time's up. I wanted to ask him one last time, why? Why me? Why now? But the lump in my throat choked the words before they could leave my lips. So instead, I slung the duffel bag over my shoulder and walked past him. Each step down the hallway felt heavier than the last. At the door, I paused, waiting, hoping for him to stop me. To call my name. To change his mind. But he didn't. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound final and sharp in the cool evening air. I stood there on the front porch, 18 years old, with nothing but a bag and 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. The house that had been my prison and my sanctuary all at once loomed behind me, its windows glowing warm in the fading light. But I wasn't welcome there anymore. And as I walked away, one truth burned in my chest like fire. My father wasn't just done with me. He was hiding something. Something that made him want me gone the second I turned 18. And soon, I was going to find out what it was. The night I left my father's house, the air felt heavier than ever. I didn't know if it was the weight of the duffel bag on my shoulder, or the weight of knowing that the man who raised me had just cut me off like a loose thread. At first, I didn't know where to go. I stood on the sidewalk staring down the street, hoping for some sort of sign, some kind of direction. But the world was silent. The street lamps hummed, the cicadas sang, and I felt utterly alone. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts, and froze. Who do you call when your own father doesn't want you anymore? I couldn't bring myself to call Mom. It had been years since she left. The last thing I wanted was to sound desperate, to open up an old wound she had chosen to walk away from. So instead, I called my best friend, Jenna. Her voice cracked with shock when I told her what happened. He what? Oh my God, you can't be serious. I don't know what to do, I whispered, standing under the cold glow of a street lamp. I can't go back. Come here, she said instantly. You're not sleeping on the street. Pack whatever you can carry and come to my place. My mom won't mind. The relief I felt at that moment nearly buckled my knees. I walked the 3 miles to her house, my bag digging into my shoulder with every step. When I finally arrived, Jenna pulled me into a hug so tight I nearly cried for the first time all night. But staying there was temporary. I knew it, and so did Jenna's mom, who was kind but firm. After a week, she sat me down at the kitchen table. Sweetheart, I wish I could keep you here longer, but this isn't a solution. You're 18 now. Have you thought about what you're going to do next? Her words stung, not because she was unkind, but because she was right. I couldn't live on my best friend's couch forever. So I packed my things again. For the next few months, I drifted. I stayed with different friends, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, always with that unspoken expiration date hanging in the air. Some parents were supportive, others clearly uncomfortable. I could feel it in the way they avoided eye contact at dinner, in the way they reminded me of house rules that weren't meant for anyone else. There were nights I didn't even have a couch to crash on. I slept in the back booth of the diner where I worked part-time, head resting on the table, pretending I was just waiting for the morning shift. Other times, I spent the night at the bus station. The security guard gave me pitying looks, but he never forced me out. He must have seen 100 kids like me, all with the same tired eyes and heavy bags. I told myself it was temporary. That once I graduated high school, once I saved enough, things would get better. But each night I lay awake staring at cracked ceilings or flickering street lights. One question haunted me. Why didn't my dad want me? I replayed the birthday morning over and over. His voice. His eyes. His silence. It wasn't just rejection. It was finality. Like he had been waiting for the exact day to cut the cord. And it broke something in me. Because no matter how many friends tried to cheer me up, no matter how many shifts I worked at the diner, nothing erased the truth. My father had chosen to let me go. It wasn't like we had fought that morning. It wasn't like I had done something unforgivable. He had simply decided I wasn't his problem anymore. I tried to harden myself, to tell everyone I didn't care. I laughed too loudly at school, posted pictures with friends on social media, pretended I was living the dream of independence. But late at night, when no one could see me, I crumbled. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being unwanted. It's not just the absence of people. It's the absence of belonging. Of knowing you have a place in this world, no matter what. And I didn't have that anymore. One night, after a long shift, I walked back to the bus stop in the freezing rain. My jacket was soaked through, my shoes squelched with every step, and my bag felt like a brick. I sat on the bench, shivering, watching cars pass by, their headlights slicing through the darkness. Every fiber of me wanted to cry. To scream. To call my dad and beg him to take me back. But pride held me back. If he didn't want me then, why would he want me now? The rain pounded harder, and in that moment, I made myself a promise. I was going to survive this. Not because of him, not despite him, but for me. Still, survival didn't erase the questions. Why had he been so eager to push me out the door the second I turned 18? Why did he avoid mentioning Mom every time I brought her up? And what was the secret I could feel humming beneath every tense silence? I didn't know it yet, but the answers were closer than I imagined. And when I finally uncovered the truth, it would change everything I thought I knew about my family, and myself. At that point, I felt completely alone, and honestly, I almost gave up. If you're still here with me, thank you for watching this far. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss how the story turns out. The nights were the hardest. Lying on the thin mattress at her friend's place, Emily found herself listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the next room, the occasional car tires screeching past outside, and the hollow sound of her own breathing. She had left her father's house with only 2 bags, clothes, a few books, and the necklace her late mother had given her. But what weighed heavier than her duffel bag was the question that wouldn't leave her mind: why? Why had her father, after raising her for 18 years, chosen her birthday of all days to look her in the eye and say, "Pack your bags"? At first, she assumed it was because he'd grown tired of her. Maybe she wasn't enough, never good enough for him. But as the weeks passed, something deeper gnawed at her gut. The way he had avoided her eyes that night. The way his voice had cracked when he said it. It didn't sound like pure anger. It sounded, almost like shame. Emily's search for answers began with small things. She visited her grandmother, an elderly woman who lived 2 towns away. When Emily mentioned that her father had kicked her out, her grandmother's face blanched, but instead of offering outrage, she only muttered, "Maybe it's better this way." That was strange. Better how? When Emily pressed for details, her grandmother grew quiet, fidgeting with the edge of her shawl, and finally said, "Some truths do more harm than good, child. Sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. Your father, he's been carrying a weight for a long time." Emily left with more questions than answers. The breakthrough came one rainy afternoon when she decided to retrieve her birth certificate. She needed it to apply for a small job at a cafe, and since she hadn't brought it with her, she braced herself to return to her father's house. The house looked different now, colder, emptier, as if her absence had carved out a piece of it. Her father wasn't home, so she let herself in with the spare key hidden beneath the porch rail. She found the folder in his study, tucked away in a locked drawer she jimmied open with a bobby pin. Her birth certificate was there, but alongside it were other documents, yellowed, fraying at the edges. Adoption papers. Emily's breath caught. She scanned the lines again and again, her heart pounding so loud she thought it would shake the walls. Her father wasn't her biological father. Tears blurred her vision as the truth sank in. He hadn't raised her because she was his flesh and blood, he had raised her because, once upon a time, he had chosen to. But if that was true, then why would he abandon her now? The next file in the stack gave her part of the answer. It was a series of letters, neatly tied with twine. They were addressed to her father but written in her mother's familiar handwriting. The first few were from years ago, before Emily was born. They spoke of a man, someone else, who her mother had loved before marrying her father. A man who had left, but not before leaving behind Emily. Her father had known all along that Emily was not his biological daughter. The letters revealed more. Her mother had begged him to accept Emily as his own, to love her despite the betrayal. And he had agreed, or at least, he had tried. Emily felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The years of strict rules. The cold stares. The sense that she was always being measured against some invisible standard, suddenly, they made sense. She wasn't just his daughter in his eyes, she was also a living reminder of his wife's betrayal. That explained his resentment. That explained why he hadn't celebrated her birthdays with warmth, why he had always seemed so detached. And now, on her 18th birthday, perhaps he felt his obligation had ended. He had done his duty, 18 years. No more. But even with the explanation, it didn't erase the sting. Emily wasn't just rejected. She had been punished for something she hadn't even done. Later that week, Emily confronted her father. She waited until he returned from work, sitting on the front porch with the folder in her lap. His face fell the moment he saw what she held. "So you know," he muttered, his voice weary. "I know," Emily said, her throat tight. "You're not my real father. Mom lied to you. And you've hated me for it all this time." He sank into the porch chair, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I didn't hate you, Emily. I tried. God knows I tried. But every time I looked at you, I saw her. I saw the man she chose before me. And I couldn't escape it. Keeping you was her dying wish. When she passed, I promised her I'd raise you until you were grown. I kept that promise. But when you turned 18, my promise was fulfilled." Emily's eyes burned. "So you kicked me out like garbage? After everything? I was your daughter, Dad. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that mattered. I called you Dad every day of my life, and her voice broke. You threw me away. He turned to her then, his eyes glistening with a pain she had never seen before. I'm sorry, he whispered. But I couldn't carry it anymore. You deserve a life without my bitterness poisoning it. Maybe you'll find your real father someday. The words landed like a stone in her chest. She had always thought her identity was fragile but intact. Now, it was shattered. She didn't just lose her father that night. She lost the very foundation of who she thought she was. But even through the heartbreak, a spark lit inside her. Maybe this was the beginning of something else, not just an ending. Maybe the truth, however cruel, had given her freedom. Freedom to seek out who she really was. Freedom to stop trying to win the love of a man who had already made his choice. And as she walked away from the porch, the folder clutched in her hands, Emily knew one thing: her story wasn't over. It was only just beginning. It had been nearly 3 years since the night my father looked me dead in the eyes on my 18th birthday and told me to pack my bags. 3 years since my life splintered into before and after. And now, standing in front of the old house again, my hands trembling against the straps of my bag, I felt like that 18-year-old girl all over again. The paint on the house was more chipped than I remembered, the once tidy yard overgrown, weeds claiming the flower beds Mom used to tend. Everything looked tired, worn out, almost like him. When the door opened, I saw my father. He wasn't the towering, immovable force I remembered. His hair had grayed more, his frame had shrunk a little, but his eyes, they were still the same, cold, guarded, unreadable. For a moment, silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken words. I need answers, I said finally, my voice firm but breaking. I've carried your decision with me every single day, and I can't keep living with questions that eat me alive. He studied me, his jaw tight, but he didn't shut the door. Instead, he stepped aside. Come in. The house smelled faintly of dust and stale coffee. The pictures on the wall hadn't changed, my childhood photos frozen in frames like artifacts of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I sat at the table, the same table where birthdays, holidays, and silent dinners had once played out. My father sat across from me, his hands clasped, knuckles white. Why did you kick me out? I demanded, unable to keep my voice calm. What did I do that was so terrible that you couldn't stand to look at me anymore? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he exhaled a long, weary breath. His eyes flicked away, as if he was bracing himself. You think it was about you, he said finally. But it never was. Then what was it? My voice cracked, frustration and pain pouring out. Do you have any idea what it was like, Dad? Sleeping on couches, wondering if I'd eaten enough to get through the day, feeling like garbage you threw out with the trash? His face twisted, as if each word struck him like a physical blow. I thought I was protecting you, he said softly. That stopped me cold. Protecting me? By abandoning me? He leaned forward, his voice lower now, almost breaking. There are things you never knew, things I kept from you because I thought it was the only way to save you from repeating my mistakes. I stared at him, unsure if I wanted to hear the truth or run from it. He continued, when your mother was alive, she always told me to be softer with you. But I couldn't. I was afraid. Afraid you'd grow up weak, dependent, like my brother. You never knew him, but he destroyed himself. Drugs. Debt. He always leaned on others, never learned to stand on his own feet. And when he died, I swore I would never let my child end up that way. Tears burned in my eyes. So you thought throwing me out at 18 would make me strong? His voice cracked for the first time. I thought if I forced you to survive, you'd never end up like him. It was the only way I knew how to love you, by being cruel enough to make you unbreakable. My chest tightened, a mixture of rage and grief surging through me. Do you hear yourself? You broke me. You didn't make me stronger, you made me doubt I was ever worth loving. He closed his eyes, pain etched across his face. For the first time I saw him not as the cold, domineering figure of my past, but as a man scarred by his own history, terrified, flawed, and fumbling in the only way he knew. The silence stretched again, but this time, it wasn't empty. It was full, of tears unshed, of truths too long buried. Finally, he whispered, I was wrong. Every day since, I've known it. But pride kept me silent, and shame kept me from reaching out. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know. I never hated you. Not for a single second. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to rage against the years of pain he had inflicted. But another part of me, the tired, broken part that had carried that weight for so long, just wanted to let it down. I can't forget what you did, I said quietly. But maybe I can try to understand it. Because the truth is, I did survive. And maybe you were right about one thing, I am unbreakable. But I wish I'd learned it with your love, not your punishment. Tears welled in his eyes then, the first I'd ever seen. He nodded, his voice hoarse. So do I. We sat there, not reconciled completely, but not strangers anymore. For the first time, the walls between us cracked. And in that fragile silence, I realized something. The pain would never fully vanish, but maybe, just maybe, healing could begin. It's strange how time reshapes pain. What once felt like a wound that would never close eventually became a scar, not invisible, but a reminder. When I look back now, I see an 18-year-old kid standing on the doorstep of a house that was no longer a home. I see their tears, their confusion, their desperate need for approval that never came. And I realize, I don't recognize that kid anymore. Because I had to grow into someone else, someone stronger, tougher, but also lonelier. There were nights when I lay awake asking questions that never got answered. Why me? Why didn't he love me the way I loved him? But as the years passed, I stopped searching for explanations in his silence. Instead, I started finding them in myself. I learned that family isn't always defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up when you're drowning. For me, that wasn't my dad. It was the friend who slipped me $20 so I could eat. The neighbor who let me crash on their couch. The teacher who told me I was worth something. Still, no matter how much healing I've done, there's a part of me that will always ache. Because the truth is, we all crave our parents' love, even when we tell ourselves we don't need it. The last time I saw him, I thought maybe things would change. That maybe, after everything, he'd say the words I'd been waiting for. But when I looked into his eyes, I realized, he was still the same man. Guarded. Cold. And though I wanted to hate him, all I felt was pity. Because here's the twist no one tells you about growing up unloved, the pain doesn't destroy you. It builds you. But it also traps the one who caused it. My dad was never free of his bitterness, never free of his secrets. And in the end, I walked away carrying scars, while he stayed behind, carrying chains. Now, when I tell this story, people always ask me, do you forgive him? My answer is complicated. I don't forgive the way he broke me, but I forgive the way he was broken himself. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Because today, I stand here not as the abandoned kid who was forced out at 18, but as the adult who learned that sometimes rejection is just a different kind of freedom. And if there's one final thing I'll say, it's this. The day my father kicked me out was the day he thought he was ending my story. But really, it was only the beginning.